There you are. Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Sunday, the 17th of November. This is The Weekend on GB News. Now, the government could copy Italy's model to crack down on illegal migrants by paying other countries to stop making people the journey to the UK. It comes amid reports Donald Trump's team are looking at plans to deport illegal migrants to, oh yeah, Rwanda. Remember that? Similar to the scheme that was scrapped by Labour. And pressure mounts on the government to reconsider its plan to change inheritance tax relief on farms. Thousands of farmers are descending on London this week to protest the changes. But will it convince the Prime Minister to do one of his famous flip-flops? And is Donald Trump good for world peace? Vladimir Zelensky seems to think so, saying Trump's victory will mean the war in Ukraine will end sooner than expected. And a protest is taking place at Wembley, calling on the FA to stop biological men from playing in women's football. We'll speak to somebody at that protest later on. Oh, and let's talk about sex, shall we? It's cuffing season, evidently, with almost half of single people on the hunt for a significant other. But what is it about this time of year that makes people want to find a partner? I don't want to find one, I've got one, thanks. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. Thank you very much for joining me, and your company is very much appreciated on this Sunday afternoon. I hope you're having a wonderful weekend out there. Because this show is all about you. It's not about me, my brilliant panel, it's about you and your views. And it's really, really easy to get involved in the show. Just go to gbnews.com/your say, and you can join in our conversation or have a little chit-chat. It's a Sunday afternoon, who cares? Now, keeping me company on today's show is political commentator Matthew Stadlen and former Conservative MP Neil Parish. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining. Matching blue, love it. But before we get stuck into today's stories, let's get the news headlines with the lovely Will Hollis.
Thank you, Dawn. Your top story at 1 o'clock. Pressure is mounting on the government to reconsider its plan to apply inheritance tax to farmers for the first time. The Prime Minister has been accused of sneaking out like a rat rather than facing farmers protesting at the Welsh Labour conference yesterday. Thousands of farmers from across the country are descending on London this week in objection to the government's plan to tax assets over £1 million by 20% when farmers die. Earlier, GB News spoke to farmer Charles Godby.
They now, I think, I'm sure, realise that their figures are wrong. We've got the evidence to show that they're wrong, but they're just burying their head in the sand. They don't want to admit it. We're not a farming dynasty. Yet we, through working hard, investing everything we have and taking far below the minimum wage, have managed to build up a sustainable farming business.
The government is expected to announce an Italian-style immigration deal with countries like Kurdistan and Vietnam. The Times reports the Home Secretary is preparing to pay millions of pounds to countries to fund more preventative measures, stopping migrants from journeying to Britain. Despite scrapping the Conservatives' flagship Rwanda plan, Labour is said to be modelling their immigration policy on that of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's deal with Albania. The Home Office has not confirmed to GB News which new countries they may be speaking with or the specifics of any reported deals. Meanwhile, the Home Office has confirmed that more than 400 illegal migrants crossed the Channel in small boats, as GB News first revealed yesterday. Official figures, show that 425 people made the journey in 9 small boats on Saturday before being intercepted by border force vessels. More than 33,500 illegal migrants have now crossed since the start of the year. That's already 4,000 more than the total number who crossed during the whole of 2023. Meanwhile, there are reports that Donald Trump's team are looking at plans to deport illegal migrants to Rwanda. Following the scheme that was drawn up by the last Conservative government, the president-elect is reportedly considering a number of different countries to send illegal immigrants to. A source close to Trump's team has said he campaigned on a promise to crack down on illegal immigration, and he is determined to stick to it. To the buses, £1 billion in extra funding for bus services has been announced by the government. Areas receiving an unprecedented amount of funding include Peterborough, the Isle of Wight and Torbay, with £712 million for councils and more than £200 million for operators. Bus fares went up by 50% recently, where they are now capped at £3 for a single trip. Back to global politics, China is ready to manage differences while working with Donald Trump, according to the country's president. Xi Jinping met with American President Joe Biden for the final time at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperative Summit in Peru. President Xi said that despite ups and downs, the relationship between the two countries has been stable during the last 4 years. Meanwhile, Joe Biden said competition should not veer into conflict. President-elect Trump has pledged to apply tariffs to Chinese imports. During his last term of office, he labelled COVID the Chinese virus. In other news, a woman found dead in the boot of a car has been named by police as Harshita Brella. The 24-year-old was discovered in London last Thursday after police received a call from a member of the public concerned for her welfare. Police believe the woman from Corby in Northamptonshire was attacked by someone she knew, but detectives say they're keeping an open mind. A mandatory referral has been made to the Independent Office for Police Conduct by Northamptonshire Police because of previous contact with Miss Brella. And finally, tickets for the next year's Glastonbury have sold out in less than 40 minutes. Organisers of the Somerset Music Festival apologised to anyone who didn't get a ticket, stating that demand was much higher than supply. Selling at £373.50 plus a £5 booking fee, this year's lineup is rumoured to include Northern rock and roller Sam Fender, punk legends Green Day and pop star Olivia Rodrigo. Those are your latest stories. For now, let's get back to the delight that is Dawn Neeson.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers, Will. I'll give you the fiver later, mate. Thank you very much. Right, OK, let's get straight into today's stories, shall we? Ministers are plotting a series of Italy-style deals to stop thousands of illegal migrants setting off towards the UK. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is expected to pay millions of pounds to countries such as Kurdistan, Turkey and Vietnam in return for cooperation and security agreements. This comes as across the pond, US President-elect Donald Trump is also planning to crack down on illegal migration, considering deporting them to, Rwanda. Remember that? A scheme actually scrapped by Sir Keir Starmer earlier this year. For more on this, let's now talk to somebody who knows exactly what's going on, can explain it in easy language for us. GB News political correspondent, the wonderful Catherine Forster. Catherine, all this sounds very familiar for a start, but ministers are preparing to strike a series of Italy-style deals.
Well, Sir Keir Starmer went to Rome in September. I was on that trip and I was very struck by the fact that Rishi Sunak, the previous PM, had a fantastic relationship with Giorgia Meloni, this right-wing figure. And Sir Keir Starmer seems to be taking a very pragmatic approach. We were there. He was very interested to learn from Italy because Italy, right at the sharp end of the migration crisis, of course, they've managed to get the numbers coming illegally into Italy down by 62%, based on the same period last year, largely by doing deals with Tunisia and Libya. paying them to increase security to stop people leaving from there, and also to encourage people to stay where they are. So we are looking at similar agreements. Now, the Sunday Times has reported looking at deals with Vietnam, Turkey, Kurdistan. Vietnam is already up and running. That was done under the Conservatives, largely social media posts trying to discourage people from setting out. Now, worth saying that GBNews were in touch with the Home Office and they wouldn't confirm talks with Turkey or Kurdistan, but they did say they're talking to a lot of countries. And our morning political programme, Louise Haigh, the Transport Secretary, was asked about this. Let's have a look at what she had to say.
Well, look, it's no secret that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary have been working with our international counterparts across the globe to tackle this issue. This is not an issue that we can resolve at our own borders, but we need to work with international partners to tackle the issue upstream. That's why we've already made deals with Kosovo, with Serbia and North Macedonia, and it's already reaping results.
So they're trying to do these deals, hoping that it will stop people coming to France and to the Channel in the first place, rather than what's currently happening was they're coming across illegally and then they're spending years in hotels, detention centres, costing us an absolute fortune. Of course, one of the government's first acts was to scrap the Rwanda scheme. We will never know now whether it would have worked. Rishi Sunak had promised flights from July. We will never know. I think it is difficult without an active deterrent. And in fact, the government's new border security commander has said as much. But I think the government have really woken up to the fact that people are very angry about this. And if they don't deal with it in some significant way, they're going to be punished at the next election, just as the Conservatives were.
It's curious, isn't it, that sort of like one of the few socialist governments in Europe at the moment is taking inspiration from one of the most right-wing governments in Europe at the moment.
Isn't it? It really is. But I think, you know, they're looking as well across the Atlantic to what's just happened in America. And Donald Trump won largely on cost of living, yes, but also on taking a very, very tough line on illegal migration. We heard last time, didn't we, about the building of the wall, but this time talking about deporting millions of people in America that are there illegally. So whereas a while ago, Labour's priorities, we had these 5 missions, there were no mention of the small boats in that. They've really changed now, and now they are focusing, yes, certainly cost of living, the NHS, of course, but also now this, because they realise how upset many people are.
People are angry, aren't they? Catherine Forster, thank you very much for explaining it. Probably the inexplicable for some of you as well. OK, let's see what my wonderful panel make of this one. I am joined by former Chief Immigration Officer at the UK Border Force first, though. So let's see what he has to make of it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining me. OK, what do you make of what you've heard from Labour today?
Very interesting, but very sensible. I'm not a great fan of the Prime Minister, but this does seem to be a good move. The Italians have been pouring money into Libya and Tunisia to stop the boats coming across the Mediterranean, and they have had some considerable success. Now, if we can replicate this with Vietnam and Turkey and Kurdistan, then we will perhaps be in the first step of stopping the boats. I mean, we've been dealing with Vietnam for a number of years. We have a good relationship with them. They understand the problems. Of course, Vietnam was the big problem for Australia, and the Australians were very robust in dealing with them. So hopefully Vietnam will be a good start. Whether we'll get so much from Turkey, I don't know. We need to offer Turkey a deal. And Turkey's big thing is they want to join the EU. Well, we have no say in that anymore. So whether Turkey we will be so successful, I don't know.
Kevin, 2 very quick points here. We've already we'd be handing over money for this to work, obviously. We've already handed over £500 million to France. We are still seeing an increase in the numbers crossing the Channel. And is it a deterrent? Will it act as a deterrent to stop people getting in those boats?
No. What we need, and you were quite right when you said we need a big deterrent, and everybody has told the Prime Minister we need a simple, big deterrent. And unfortunately, the Europeans don't take us as seriously as we would like to be taken, because they view us as a soft touch. And the French are always saying that we are a soft touch. And unfortunately, we are. So,
Indeed.
We need a big deterrent. We need another Rwanda, really, but the Labour Party will never agree to that.
Okay, well, it'll be interesting to see if our President Trump can make it work when he comes into power. Kevin Saunders, former Chief Immigration Officer, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. OK, let's see what my panel make of this. Former Conservative MP Neil Parish and political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Matthew, it's very curious, isn't it, taking inspiration from one of the most right-wing governments in Europe about how to do with migration.
It is, but I think Keir Starmer is a political pragmatist, and I think he understands the polls and he understands the threat to him politically and to Labour politically if they don't get a grip on this. Doesn't mean he is going to get a grip on it, because it's an incredibly difficult scenario. I mean, if it was easy to get a grip on, Sunak would have got a grip on it, because he told us, didn't he, was going to stop the boats. And if he was confident, by the way, that the Rwanda scheme would work or that it would get off the ground, he probably wouldn't have called the election when he did.
Neil?
I just can't. I mean, I welcome the idea that Labour is going to have some sort of deterrent, but I can't believe my ears, actually, because, I mean, I sat in Parliament while not only did they, Labour oppose it, they went really all guns to rubbish the Rwanda, the suitability of the country, all of these things. And some of those names, and I'm not going to sort of start damning countries, but some of those countries suggested, I would say, are interesting countries. Let me be sort of diplomatic. And so, therefore, all of this due diligence and working out exactly what these countries are like, how they're going to be dealt with, are they going to be properly treated while they're there, they're going to have to do all that like we had to do over Rwanda. And so he's driven by opinion polls and the fact that people are worried about migration, but surely he should have acted much more statesmanlike when he was in opposition, because all he did was absolutely rubbish Rwanda. We Tories...
This isn't Rwanda. This isn't Rwanda.
We Tories, we're dinosaurs, and how dare we send people here, thither and that, because we wanted a deterrent, and now he's decided he wants a deterrent. And I shall be very interested to see when the diligence is done on the systems in these countries, whether he's going to get on any better than we did going into Rwanda.
It's a very fair point, isn't it, though, the fact that, the human rights issues in Rwanda were a big problem for Labour. And now we're talking about working with countries where human rights groups are saying they really are just as bad as Rwanda.
Yeah, and look, I think there are moral and ethical issues here, and if you look at the front page of The Observer, for example, today, you'll find human rights campaigners not happy with this idea at all, because the worry is that some people will be sent back to camps or wherever they came from in countries like Libya, and they might undergo inhuman treatment, maybe even torture. So I'm not saying for a second that this is... Let me just quickly address the point that this is a particularly good solution. I'm not even saying that it will necessarily work, but if you start from the premise that it will work, if you start from the premise that Rwanda would have worked, and I don't think Rwanda would have worked, then you've got three options, haven't you? One is Rwanda, where you're sending people, often very vulnerable people, to a totally alien country where they've got no contacts with, they've got no knowledge of, or you accept them here. And I think most of us realise that we can't accept unlimited people here. Or three, you get their governments from their home countries to try and get them to stay in those original countries. Those seem to me to be the three choices.
So Kurdistan, you know, is wonderful, is it? So, and everything's going to be absolutely hunky-dory. I mean, I'm just being sarcastic.
Turkey doesn't exactly cover itself in glory
Turkey doesn't cover itself in glory either, especially with the Kurds and everything else that's going on there. And then, like I said, coupled with this, you know, you talk about the human rights and activists. Don't forget, this is the very stance that in opposition that Keir Starmer was actually saying all the time, and he was actually supporting all those groups.
Well, he was saying we were going to smash the gangs.
All of a sudden, he seems to sort of turn turtle because naturally people are very concerned about migration. But surely there has to be some sort of to carry on in a similar way. And this is where I think, you know, it was so wrong of him to go so far in opposing what we were doing and then really turning around and looking at countries which I dare I say, when you look into them, their human rights are probably very little better, if anything, than Rwanda.
Very quickly, Matthew, there is a slight whiff of hypocrisy about this, isn't there, do you think?
It's a question, I suppose, of whether you think that there is a difference between sending people to Rwanda, with which they've got no ties, and that does have a very poor human rights record, with a president who won on 99.whatever% of the vote. I mean, imagine if a British Prime Minister got that sort of vote, or a British political party. It would be effectively a dictatorship. Or you think it's better to try and keep them in their original countries. Neither of them seem to me to be attractive ideas because there'll be human suffering involved. But I come back to this point. We do not have unlimited capacity to help people. We help my grandparents who are refugees, and my family's always been incredibly grateful for that. But we don't have unlimited capacity.
I think we'd all agree on that one.
Yeah, I think we agreed that.
Yeah, we'll be coming back to this story. I'm Dawn Neeson from GB News, and the Prime Minister was accused of running out of the back door to avoid farmers protesting in Wales yesterday as anger grows over changes to inheritance tax. I'll be speaking to a farmer after this break, and he's not happy. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No. Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, you know, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up, it's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about that.
Really? What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, well, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with me.
Yeah, you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you very much for your company this afternoon. Hope you're having a lovely Sunday out there. Now, pressure is continuing to mount on the government to reconsider changes to inheritance tax on farms, with thousands of farmers preparing to descend on London this week to protest. Some have even threatened to go on strike, cutting off Britain's domestic food supply. But will it be enough to convince the Prime Minister to change course? I mean, he has done it in the past, hasn't he? For more on this, I'm joined by farmer Joe Hilditch. Joe, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Love to see you. Joe, are you going to be protesting on Tuesday?
I am going to be there, yes. I'm going to be lobbying, and I will be at the rally as well before.
And obviously, it sounds like a stupid question, but a lot of people, myself included, live in cities. I mean, how important is this to farmers? I mean, there's a lot of very, very strong feelings out there.
I mean, I think for me, it's about the generational thing. I think it's about the lack of respect for us. I think I'm a fourth generation farmer, and I just feel this is just another nail in the coffin. We all need to pay tax, but our return on capital employed is less than 0.5%. And, you know, it's not sustainable then to just add another thing to the armoury that is being thrown at us by government. And, yeah, I think I'm sad more than furious. I'm furious too, but I'm really sad.
What does it mean for you personally with your farm?
Well, I mean, if you look around me, behind me, I've got a farm building there. There's a slightly dilapidated, falling down building. If you were to look up the yard, you'd see a chicken farm. There's a tractor just over the way. So it's not just about APR, which is the 300 acres where I'm farming blackcurrants, vineyards, orchards, which in their own have a huge value, but it's about all the material that I have here as well. So I can easily, just looking around, add up to well over the threshold that the government are talking about. And the numbers are just wrong. I strongly feel that.
How far do you think farmers are willing to go on this one? I mean, the government, Keir Starmer has doubled down several times now that he is not budging. This is going to stay exactly as it is. He's not going to tweak it. How far are farmers willing to go? I mean, do you think we will see streets blockaded with tractors?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think in general we're really like that. But we can do things. We can easily get the shelves empty for a few days. We can not take sewage sludge from all the water companies. We can cause difficulty. I mean, I'm personally not militant, so I think the rally on Tuesday is very much, you know, we're all taking food for food banks. We want to get solidarity from people rather than to get people irritated by us just, you know, jumping up and down. But you know, I would say now I've left a chicken in the oven, which probably comes from my farm. There's potatoes from maybe the farm over the way, carrots, purple sprouting. Just think about your food and where it comes from and where it's going to keep coming from if we can't afford to produce it. I mean, no doubt the prices will go up if this kind of crusade continues.
That's the killer question, though, Joe, isn't it? I mean, how long are farmers willing to continue this action if the government doesn't budge? I mean, are you in it for the long haul? You're just not going to stop until you get some giving in from the government.
Yeah, I think we're pretty resolute as a group. I really do. I think, you know, this will keep rumbling, that is for sure. You know, our local MP is a Green Party member, and I haven't seen her supporting her rural constituents at all so far.
So yeah. It's those working people, yourself included, that are really going to suffer if this goes on.
Yeah, and Keir Starmer said he wanted to support the working people. Well, I've been back on the farm for 30 years. I have worked really hard. And you know what? I haven't given myself a salary rise in all that time. Some years I've taken a bit of a dividend, but you know, anyone else who's getting into career would hope for career progression. They'd hope for salary increase. And, you know, here I am. I mean, don't get me wrong. The lifestyle is lovely. I love living where I live. but you know, I'm not getting a great reward for it.
No, indeed. Lovely. Thank you very much for joining us. That's Jo Hilditch from Herefordshire on a farm. Thank you very much. Enjoy that lunch, Jo. OK, let's see what my panel make of this one. Former Conservative MP and farmer Neil Parish and political commentator Matthew Staddon, who was brought up on a farm. So, win double for me.
Part of the time.
Part of the time.
But why are we spending so much of our precious time on the airwaves, in column inches, endlessly debating farmers who are having this collective rage? We're not going to stop being fed. And these, by the way, Starmer will not back down. I've got no inside info on that. But if you look at the fact that he didn't back down on the winter fuel allowance, which I opposed, I thought that was bad policy and bad politics. There's no way he's going to give in to farmers.
Do you think this is a good policy?
No, I think there are problems with it. And of course I have empathy with farmers. By the way, farmers work unbelievably hard. The farm I used to spend 15, 16 weeks a year on as a child, I mean, they were working 365 days a year, these people. So huge respect. And they are asset rich, a lot of them, but cash poor or income no. So I understand that. But you look, there are so many people up and down the country who would love to inherit their parents' home worth millions without having to pay any inheritance tax on it. They don't get it. So why is there this particular special pleading about farming?
OK, so you're comparing an ordinary house to a farm that is producing food that feeds the country.
But the farms aren't going to stop. It's going to be easier to get other... It's going to get easier to get newcomers in because it won't be stitched up by families.
Right, OK. So farmers are stitching people up and the food they supply isn't that important?
I can't believe what I'm hearing here from our Labour spokesman because, I mean, it was only, 4 years ago when we had COVID. We really needed our food. People were going to farm shops. They really relied on it. Farmers don't... It's not, you know, you can value your house at £1 million or whatever, but the land, 100 acres is £1 million. 100 acres will probably return you in probably between £5,000 and £10,000. And so, therefore, if you ask somebody then to raise £200,000 on it and more, they just can't do it. And I just think that farming families are absolutely the bedrock of this country. They do work all hours God gave, and they are very valuable. You take food miles as well. We've got a government that's very conscious of in the environment, and yet what this will do in the long run is actually mean more imported food, because all the policy, not just this inheritance tax, they're reducing the payments to farmers, they're making it more difficult to farm. The whole thing is really, really difficult, and it's no wonder, you know, you're going to get a big protest.
And we're already producing less than we have for a good couple of decades, isn't it?
Yes, you see, I mean, in the last government was starting to take food security seriously. Keir Starmer, one of the first questions that Rishi Sunak gave him in Parliament when Keir Starmer got into power was was he going to take food security seriously? He didn't really answer the question. Obviously, they don't. And, of course, the other issue is that up to 2 or 3 days before this announcement, the farmers were told that it was not going to happen. And you see, you know, if of all the ways of raising money, this will destroy some farming families and put even more pressure on them. And yet it's a very slow burn. It will take a long time because it'll become very complicated now because you will use more accountants, more solicitors, all of these things. And so, therefore, it is one of these things where it's just a political thing.
Tell this to nurses and doctors and porters.
Who's doing a really good job.
This is extraordinary.
OK, A, one at a time. B, we've run out of time. For this bit, we're coming back to it so you can have your say later on, honestly. OK, I'm Jordan Neeson. This is GB News. Blimey. Plenty more coming up on today's show. Ukraine's president says the war with Russia will end sooner than expected because of Donald Trump's election victory. So, is Trump good for world peace? But first, let's get the news with, the very lovely Will Hollis.
Thank you, Dawn. Your top story at 1:30. Pressure is mounting on the government to reconsider its plan to apply inheritance tax to farmers for the first time. The Prime Minister has been accused of sneaking out like a rat rather than facing farmers protesting at the Welsh Labour conference yesterday. Thousands of farmers from across the country are descending on London this week in objection to the government's plan to tax assets worth over £1 million by 20% when farmers die. The government is expected to announce an Italian-style immigration deal with countries like Kurdistan and Vietnam. The Times reports the Home Secretary is preparing to pay millions of pounds to countries to fund more preventative measures, stopping migrants from journeying to Britain. Despite scrapping the Conservatives' flagship Rwanda plan, Labour is said to be modelling their immigration policy on that of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's deal with Albania. The Home Office has not confirmed to GB News which new countries they may be speaking with or the specifics of any reported deals. Hundreds of drones and missiles have been fired into Ukraine as Russia ramps up attacks on infrastructure ahead of winter. In the biggest attack for several months, Ukraine's foreign minister said energy and water utilities have taken severe damage, with power cuts in several regions, while 7 people were killed. The election of Donald Trump this month has increased this uncertainty around the conflict, with the prospect of a looming push toward negotiations expected. Back to the UK. £1 billion in extra funding for bus services has been announced by the government. Areas receiving an unprecedented amount of funding include Peterborough, the Isle of Wight and Torbay, with £712 million for councils and more than £200 million for operators. Bus fares went up by 50% recently, where they are now capped at £3 for a single trip. In other sad news, a woman found dead in the boot of her car has been named by police as Harshita Brella. The 24-year-old was discovered in London last Thursday after police received a call from a member of the public concerned for her welfare. Police believe the woman from Corbeil in Northamptonshire was attacked by someone she knew, but detectives say they're keeping an open mind. A mandatory referral has been made to the Independent Office for Police Conduct by Northamptonshire Police because of previous contact with Miss Brella. And finally, your last story for now. Tickets for the next year's Glastonbury have sold out in less than 40 minutes. Organisers of the Somerset Music Festival apologised to anyone who didn't get a ticket, stating that demand was much higher than supply, selling at £373.50 plus a £5 booking fee. This year's lineup is rumoured to include Sam Fender, Green Day and pop star Olivia Rodrigo. Those are your headlines for now. I'll be back with more a little later.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So we've got colder weather on the horizon for many of us, bringing some blustery snow showers, particularly to northern parts of Scotland. But before we get there, we've got an area of low pressure waiting in the wings out in the northwest of the UK that will be moving its way towards us through the end of the weekend and into the start of the new working week. Before we get there, though, it's a bit of a mixed picture as we go through this afternoon. Some sunny spells, some scattered cloud, plenty of showers around in the north and the west, and for northern parts of Scotland, these likely to turn to sleet and snow over the hills. There'll be some sunshine between those showers quite widely across the country, and it'll still be feeling quite mild in the south, temperatures just a touch above average, but further north with some blustery northerly winds, feeling quite chilly through this afternoon. As we then go into this evening, those showers continue to pile in across northern parts of Scotland. Perhaps we could see up to around 10 centimetres of snow across the high ground by the time we get to Monday morning, and it will be a really quite chilly end to the evening, particularly where we see those clear spells. For parts of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, perhaps a bit more cloud around, so those blustery showers pushing in from the northwest. And for much of England and Wales as well, it will be a cloudy end to the day on Sunday. As we then go through the rest of Sunday evening, showers continuing across northern parts of Scotland, but southern parts of Scotland, northern parts of England, perhaps staying that little bit drier overnight, plenty of clear spells around. But a more organised band of rain pushes its way south and eastwards during the early hours of Monday morning, affecting southern parts of England and South Wales, perhaps turning heavy in places, and that will keep it just a little bit milder here, temperatures in the high single figures. But further north, quite a harsh frost to start on Monday morning, perhaps some icy stretches in places, so do take care during Monday morning's rush hour. As we then head through in towards Monday afternoon, this next area of rain arrives from the west, pushing its way eastwards as we go through the afternoon, perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground across Northern Ireland. But there will be some sunnier spells across eastern areas, but it will still be a chilly feeling day with temperatures well to the low single figures further north, but a little bit milder further south.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back for the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for joining me. Keep me company rather than just these two. I need it. OK, now, being very naughty during the break here. In case you're wondering, Matthew Stadler and Neil Parish, who honestly are a right pair. Now, Zelensky has predicted war in Ukraine will end sooner than expected because of Donald Trump's election victory. The Ukrainian president said it's certain that the war will end and sooner with the policies of that team than that now lead the White House. So is Trump good for world peace? For more on this, I'm joined by former head of counterterrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Major General Chip Chapman. Chip, thank you very much for joining me. Love to see you this Sunday afternoon. Chip, Donald Trump, is he good for world peace?
Well, there are a lot of complex problems which are intertwined that he has to deal with. So it's complex, as war is. The jury's out, really. It's when he's briefed on the connections between, for example, the Ukrainian conflict and the Russian involvement with Iran and North Korea, and Donald Trump is rabidly anti-Iranian, for example, that we get into the problems of, when the rubber hits the road, the complexity of these things mean that simple solutions, i.e., I can solve this in 24 hours, are unlikely to happen. Now, there will be diplomatic solutions to most of these things, and people will be scared in certain parts of the world. For example, he's absolutely got an Israel first policy. His policies in his former administration were the same. The Abraham Accords were not signed up to by any of the Arab countries. So that's a difficult area. China is a difficult area because he does see them as a competitor. So the jury's out until we see how his cabinet comes together, because you've got a fair number of hawks there, and he does believe in America's through strength policy. That's actually what he believed before. The US national security policy under him in 2017 absolutely hasn't changed. He brought the end of various conflicts. He signed the Doha Agreement in Afghanistan, for example, and there were no initiation of new wars. But solving wars which are ongoing and problems is more difficult than, great man theory of international relations, which generally doesn't apply.
It does seem to be a thaw in the relationship, though, doesn't it? Because, Trump has said that the war is a drain on US resources and claimed he has drawn up a plan to sort of to cut down how much arms was being supplied to Ukraine. And also you've got Elon Musk, who is obviously the right-hand man to Donald Trump, taking the mickey out of Zelensky also on social media by referencing him as a comedian and all that, and posting clips from the days when he was a comedian.
Well, we all know that a diplomatic solution will probably occur at some stage in Ukraine. It's just when the timing of that occurs. And the reason for that is really the theory of why fighting stops. Fighting either stops because of decisive military victory, that is highly unlikely from either side, or because of the improbability of victory, and that is absolutely the case in the military sphere at the moment, or because that the costs to a country, either economically, politically, militarily, are too high. And indeed, this is the paradox. It's the negotiating paradox we saw last night with 120 missiles and 90 drones. seeking to disrupt the electricity grid of Ukraine. That is Putin trying to set the conditions from his perspective for future negotiations. He still has a minimalist position, which is the annexation of the 4 oblasts, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kherson, along with Crimea, and a maximalist position that he still wants Ukraine to be part of sovereign Russia. That is the problem of when you get to the table, what is to be discussed?
Just one very quick answer. Are you more optimistic than you were with Biden in charge?
Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I like a man with few words. Major General Chip Chapman, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. OK, let's see what the panel make of this. I've still got Neil Parish and Matthew Studland with me. And, right, who wants to go first on this one?
Well, I think...
that'll be Matthew, then.
There was always the possibility that Trump might be better for world peace, but not necessarily by design, but because there is a certain fear factor about the most powerful human being on the planet being unpredictable.
Right.
And what Zelensky has said, I think, is fascinating, because it seems to be a significant shift from where he's been.
From both men.
You know, from a position essentially of we're not going to yield an inch of Ukraine, which of course is his and the Ukrainian people's rights, to a position where he now thinks that the war is going to end next year. Now, as I understand it, if they were to go down the diplomatic route and give up land, that would have to go to a referendum of the Ukrainian people, and I don't know what the result of that would be. But it is, it seems, a shift. I do think, because life isn't black and white, and just because I would have preferred a Democrat president over a Republican, and certainly a Democrat president over Trump, when Biden was in office, latterly, he certainly did not project power or strength, partly because, or confidence, partly because he was quite obviously going senile. And that's an absurd position for the biggest democracy, well, not the biggest democracy in the world because India is, but the most powerful democracy in the world to find itself in.
All right. Neil, what do you make of this one? We're running out of time.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Trump is unorthodox, and so therefore he will put pressure on the Ukrainians to give up land. We haven't really, the West have not given the Ukrainians enough weapons. We haven't given them the ability to fire into Russia. So if we're not actually going to support the Ukrainians enough, all they're doing is losing more and more men. And so, therefore, I think it's time really to sue for peace, and Trump's going to make him do it because he won't supply him with weapons. You've got Olaf Scholz now actually talking to Putin. That wasn't a coincidence that he
Zelensky wasn't happy about that, but now that seems to have been...
But you see, it's all the fact that the political pendulum is swinging. We haven't supported them enough, and I'm worried that we're just going to throw too many Ukrainian lives to... Because you've got North Korea now joining in on the side of Putin. It is absolutely horrendous what Ukraine's going through, and I think, much as I hate to say it, I think they need to give up land now in order to get peace, and then later on, perhaps when Putin's gone, we can perhaps do a deal, because those lives that are lost now, you'll never bring them back.
Well, strong views. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. Let me know. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. It's cuffing season, with Brits looking to settle down, I think is the polite way to put it, before the festive season. We'll find out more about this after the break, and you don't want to miss it. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
The row over Prince Harry's US visa will be brought back into focus.
Earlier this year, Nigel Farage asked Donald Trump about this very issue. Let's take a listen.
No one knows the truth. What did he put on his American visa form?
If they know something about the drugs and if he lied, they'll have to take appropriate action.
Appropriate action? What could that mean?
Well, the fractured relationship between the president-elect and the royal couple, or ex-royal couple, I should say, began in 2020 when the Sussexes urged American voters to stay clear of Trump, urging them to reject hate speech, misinformation and online negativity.
OK, well, to break down this story for us, we're joined by royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, so what are the chances of Trump saying, you know what, Harry, time to get out of here?
I very strongly suspect that the new administration has other priorities, and also it wouldn't want the enormous amount of fuss. Can you just imagine it in hypothetical situations if it happened? I mean, we've seen Nigel Farage there get an answer from Donald Trump, which implied that this might be looked into, and it might.
The Americans say that if you have taken illegal drugs, you're not allowed immigration status. Prince Harry, in his book, said he'd taken illegal drugs, and there he is with American immigration status. I mean, how do the two things make sense? Either he lied in the book, or he lied to the US government.
I can't see that the future administration would want to be involved with problems with the British royal family, which obviously would occur if this happened.
Yeah, that's true. Richard Fitzwilliams, thank you very much, as ever.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Now, it's cuffing season, apparently, which means, stop sniggering, which means 4 in 10 Brits are looking for a significant other to settle down with ahead of the festive period.
But only for the festive period.
Right, OK. A new survey also showed that 29% are after a date to see the new year in with it. To explain exactly what cuffing season means in language entirely suitable for a Sunday lunchtime, I'm joined by broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Berriford. Lucy, cuffing season, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking handcuffs here. I know that's wrong.
No, it could all be part of it,
right,
obviously.
Okay.
But
what's going on?
I think what we're really talking about is this way in which people long for connection. And when you get all of those adverts at Christmas that talk about, you know, big families and buying gifts for your significant other, if you're on your own, you can actually feel even more lonely. And the idea is that, yes, people want to have a relationship, but they might not want it for very long. They just want it to have someone to kiss under the mistletoe, or they might want it because they want to have someone to buy something for. But it's more interesting nowadays because I think relationships are so fluid. There was some amazing research that came out from YouGov and Ashley Madison. Now, they're the married dating website people. And they were looking at how people are looking at short-term relationships. They're not necessarily wanting a relationship for the rest of their life. They recognise that not everybody will be able to meet their emotional needs. And when you have the cuffing season cut into that, there is that sense that people only want the relationship for a specific purpose. And we perhaps all need to get used to this idea of non-monogamy.
Why do we have this panic about the festive season? We invest so much emotionally. Even if we're not religious and we don't actually celebrate Christmas, we invest so much emotionally in this time of year.
Because we invest so much in the idea of connection, which, again, all of these Christmas adverts, it's all about what are your connections. And if you don't have them, then you're made to feel like there's something wrong with you, that you're inadequate, which is obviously not true, that actually you can have an extremely joyous life even when you're single. But for a lot of people, the idea of going back to your family network and them saying, so have you got someone now? Is there someone on the scene? There's so much pressure to be in a couple. And what the Ashley Madison YouGov research showed was that people don't want those labels anymore. They don't want to feel constricted, to feel like I've got to be with someone, to change your relationship status on social media that says I am in a relationship. That actually it's more about about being fluid. So this cuffing season, what used to be about getting people together, I think it's more showcasing the fact that people don't want to be together permanently.
So it's literally just for the holiday. It's almost like a dog is not just...
Exactly. Relationships perhaps are longer for life and not just for Christmas, but for a lot of people they are only just for who am I going to kiss under the mistletoe? Who am I going to see the new year in with? And then they get rid of that person and they come and see me clinically and say, I want to change my life and find the real deal.
Lucy Beresford, thank you very much. So now you know. OK, well, good luck with that one, everybody out there. Very happily married here. Well, I think. Anyway, let's have a look at the weather and see what's doing for the weekend for you.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So some wintry showers continuing across parts of Scotland with some cloud and rain on the way for much of England and Wales as we go over the next couple of days and into the start of the new working week. That's all thanks to this area of low pressure up in the northwest of the UK, slowly pushing its way south and eastwards as we go into the start of Monday and Tuesday. For the rest of today, though, a bit of a mixed picture, plenty of scattered showers around, but some clear skies developing across northern parts of England, much of Scotland, and under those clear skies likely to turn quite chilly, particularly during the early hours of Monday morning. So quite a harsh frost to start the day on Monday here. Perhaps some icy stretches during Monday morning's rush hour. So do take care during the morning rush hour. Further south, a little bit of a milder start due to all that cloud, and outbreaks of showery rain will continue to spread their way south and eastwards as we go through much of Monday morning. These perhaps turning a little heavy across southwestern parts of England, particularly over any high ground. But for central parts of England, North Wales, northern parts of England and Northern Ireland too, a bit of a brighter start to the day, albeit quite a chilly start with those temperatures dropping below zero. Particularly across parts of Scotland, we could see -2 or -3 in some rural spots, and snow showers continuing across the far north of Scotland, perhaps building up to around 10 centimetres of snow over any high ground here. Further south, that area of rain pushes offshore down towards the south coast, and this is the next area of rain that arrives across Northern Ireland. Could turn particularly heavy across Northern Ireland, and we could see some sleet and snow over the hills as well. But further east, there'll be some sunshine, perhaps turning a little hazy through the afternoon, and feeling quite chilly with northerly winds here. Temperatures struggling to reach much above 3 or 4 degrees, but just holding on to that slightly milder air in the southwest as we go through the afternoon. That area of rain across Northern Ireland pushes its way eastwards into northern parts of England, and we could see some quite disruptive sleet and snow, particularly over any high ground through northern England on Monday afternoon. It will be staying quite bright with some sunny spells through much of next week, but it will be feeling really quite chilly with those temperatures well below average for the time of year.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win Christmas on Us this year. There's £20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag. We'll get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 2 o'clock on Sunday, the 17th of November. This is The Weekend on GB News. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're having a lovely weekend out there. Now, the government could copy Italy's model to crack down on illegal migrants by paying other countries to stop people making the journey to the UK. It comes amid reports Donald Trump's team are looking at plans to deport illegal migrants to, yes, Rwanda. Similar to the scheme scrapped by Labour, remember? And pressure mounts on the government to reconsider its plan to change inheritance tax relief for farms. Thousands of farmers are descending on London this week to protest the changes, but will it convince the Prime Minister to do one of his infamous flip-flops? And a protest is taking place at Wembley today, calling on the FA to stop biological men from playing women's football. We'll speak to somebody at that protest to find out more about that one. And some showbiz, why not? Colleen Roney and a whole host of other famous faces enter the jungle this evening as I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here kicks off. We'll have all the juicy, very juicy details on that one. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is indeed The Weekend. So we have got a cracking hour lined up for you. Really don't want to move a muscle. As I said, we've got a great jungle exclusive coming up, and we've also got something very naughty to do with Christmas coming up. We've already done the cuffing season. This is even better. But this show is nothing without you and your views. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today, and I promise I'll read as many out as I can. It's very simple to get involved. gbnews.com/your-say and join in our conversation. Keeping me company on today's show, yes, they're still here, is political commentator Matthew Stadlen and former Conservative MP Neil Parish. Gentlemen, thank you very much for...
I can't actually move a muscle. So thanks for that.
Oh, God,
Thanks
honestly, some people you just can't shut up.
No.
Matthew, in case you're wanting to know, has put his back out.
Yeah.
OK, I'm not going to tell you how. That's up for him. Right, but before we get into today's story, Matthew Stadlen, let's get the news headlines with Will Hollis.
Thank you, Dawn. At 2 o'clock, let's get you your top story. Pressure is mounting on the government to reconsider its plan to apply inheritance tax to farmers for the first time. The Prime Minister has been accused of sneaking out like a rat rather than facing farmers protesting at the Welsh Labour conference yesterday. Thousands of farmers from the country are descending on London this week in objection to the government's plan to tax assets over £1 million by 20% when farmers die. Earlier, GB News spoke to farmer Charles Godby.
They now, I think, I'm sure, realise that their figures are wrong. We've got the evidence to show that they're wrong, but they're just burying their head in the sand. They don't want to admit it. We're not a farming dynasty. Yet we, through working hard, investing everything we have and taking far below the minimum wage, have managed to build up a sustainable farming business.
From farming to immigration, the government is expected to announce an Italian-style immigration deal with countries like Kurdistan and Vietnam. The Times reports the Home Secretary is preparing to pay millions of pounds to countries to fund more preventative measures, stopping migrants from journeying to Britain. Despite scrapping the Conservatives' flagship Rwanda plan, Labour is said to be modelling their immigration policy on that of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's deal with Albania. The Home Office has not confirmed to GB News which new countries they may be speaking with or the specifics of any reported deals. Meanwhile, the Home Office has confirmed that more than 400 illegal migrants crossed the Channel in small boats yesterday, as first revealed by GB News. Official figures show that 425 people made the journey in 9 small boats on Saturday before being intercepted by Border Force vessels. More than 33,500 illegal migrants have now crossed since the start of the year. That's already 4,000 more than the total number who crossed during the whole of 2023. On the buses, £1 billion in extra funding for services has been announced by the government. Areas receiving an unprecedented amount of funding include Peterborough, the Isle of Wight and Torbay, just to name a few, with £712 million for councils and more than £200 million for bus operators. Bus fares went up by 50% recently, where they are now capped at £3 for a single trip. Well, earlier GB News spoke to Transport Secretary Louise Haigh.
First time we are committing this funding in a fair, transparent way. The previous government took funding streams and they made areas compete against each other, with particularly rural areas losing out. Today, the funding settlement will give areas like Essex, Kent, Devon and areas across the north like Blackburn and Liverpool record sums of money to put into their bus services, which will increase reliability, improve real-time information and things like accessibility at bus stops and bus stations.
In other news, a woman found dead in the boot of a car has been named by police as Harshita Brella. The 24-year-old was discovered in London last Thursday after police revealed a call from a member of the public concerned for her welfare. Police believe the woman from Corby was attacked by someone she knew, but detectives say they're keeping an open mind. A mandatory referral has been made to the Independent Office for Police Conduct by Northamptonshire Police because of previous contact with Miss Brella. Hundreds of drones and missiles have been fired into Ukraine as Russia ramps up attacks on infrastructure ahead of winter. In the biggest attack for several months, Ukraine's foreign minister said energy and water utilities have taken severe damage, with power cuts in several regions, while 7 people were killed. The election of Donald Trump this month has increased the uncertainty around the conflict, with the prospect of a looming push toward negotiations expected. A Labour peer has criticised railway death traps after he was injured falling between a gap between the train and platform last month. Blind former Home Secretary David Blunkett needed hospital treatment after the accident at Westminster Tube Station. The Labour lord said his feet slipped while boarding the train behind his guide dog. He's demanded Transport for London do more to protect blind passengers. And the last one for now, next year's Glastonbury has sold out in less than 40 minutes. Organisers of the Somerset Music Festival apologised to anyone who didn't get a ticket, stating that demand was much higher than supply, selling at £373.50 plus that £5 booking fee. This year's lineup is rumoured to include rock and roller Sam Fender, punk legends Green Day and pop star Olivia Rodrigo. Those are your latest headlines. Let's get you back to Dawn for the afternoon.
Thank you very much, Will. That makes me sound like a safe pair of hands, and I can assure you I'm probably not. OK, let's get straight into today's story, shall we? It has been revealed this morning that ministers are plotting a series of Italy-style deals to stop thousands of illegal migrants setting off towards the UK. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is expected to pay millions of pounds to countries such as Turkey and Vietnam in return for cooperation and security agreements. This comes as across the pond, US President-elect Donald Trump is also planning to crack down on illegal migration, considering deportation to, Rwanda. Remember that? That was a scheme scrapped by Sir Keir Starmer earlier this year. Let's get someone to make some sense of this, shall we? So let's talk to former Conservative Immigration Minister Kevin Foster. Kevin, thank you very much for joining me this afternoon. Now, ministers are preparing to strike a series of Italy-style deals, which basically means paying more money to other countries to stop the small boats. Does this make sense to you?
Well, I think it'll depend what these deals actually include. If it's, for example, returning people to the Kurdish Autonomous Region, which is one of the highest levels of small boat arrivals, because most people look at the numbers and say, hang on, there isn't Kurdish numbers listed, but of course that's because there isn't a separate Kurdish state, so you'll see them within Syria, in Turkey and Iraqi numbers in terms of claiming asylum, particularly Iraq, because that's where the KAR is. So is this about returning people back, a law enforcement work, which could be fairly useful, whereas the Italy-style deals, which seem to be being referenced, are ones like with Libya, which is about stopping people, for example, coming through Libya from sub-Saharan Africa and then travelling on to Italy, in the way people come through France to travel on to the UK. So it will be interesting to see, is this about returning people from some of the highest claim countries? If it is, that will make a difference. But if it's just, another round of intelligence cooperation, that's great, and it's not necessarily negative, but it won't have the type of impact that literally, for example, someone thinking of paying a trafficker to come from Kurdistan to the UK, if they see a flight heading back the other way, that is going to have much more of an impact on numbers.
If it does follow the route of the Italian one at the moment, it does involve them basically paying the countries where the migrants are coming from to stop them leaving in the first place, which has caused all sorts of issues with human rights groups already. And some of the countries we're talking about here have almost worse human rights issues than Rwanda does. So does this have a slight whiff of hypocrisy about it to you?
Well, it certainly has a whiff of something, because, to remove back to some of these countries, you are going to have to deal with all the lawfare that will come from all the human rights lawyers, all those wanting to cite the ECHR and various other things that, as you've touched on, there's actually slightly more issues in one or two of these nations than there would be with Rwanda, which has actually seen refugees resettled to it by the UNHCR, we have to remember. But that said, we do send people back to Iraq. We have sent foreign national offenders, people who've committed criminal offences, back to Iraq and also Iran as well in recent years. So it's not impossible. And if you have defined that someone hasn't got a genuine fear of persecution, then actually, there should be no reason why not to return. But a lot of times the challenge comes, particularly in places like when we're talking about the Kurdish region, has been actually not so much agreeing the principle, but actually getting travel documents for those who want to send back. And that's where these deals really have the test of them, is when you actually give the authorities concerned a list of names and say, when can we return them to you?
Kevin, we've already given the Conservatives struck a deal with France to give 500 million over, and we've seen an increase in the small boats crossing. As of November, 32,900 people across the Channel this year. So handing money to other countries doesn't seem to work, does it?
Well, it depends what you're handing it to them for. And, as always, you can never prove, would there have been even more if we didn't do work with France? The answer is probably yes, but it's a counterfactual. You can't prove how many there would have been. However, the big thing is, if you can return people to their country of origin, i.e. the country they're a citizen of, that can have a really big impact, because, of course, it destroys the whole point of getting in a boat to come to the UK if you know we have a route to return you to somewhere. Yet we need to remember in all this, the biggest countries, I think up until June, in terms of asylum claims, were Afghan and Iran. Particularly Afghan, we haven't got a route back to Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. So this is where things like Rwanda come in. What do you do with people who've come from a safe and democratic France, chosen to come to the UK, could have claimed asylum in France. It's a perfectly democratic country, but they've chosen to come here. What do you do with them if you can't return them to the country they've just left, France, because they refuse, and you can't return them to their country of origin? Then that's where a third country comes in. It's no surprise to hear, tackling the same challenge, the United States is now also looking at a Rwanda-style deal. OK,
fine. Thank you very much. That's former Conservative Immigration Minister Kevin Foster there. Thank you very much, Kevin. OK, let's see what my panel make of this. Neil Parish and Matthew Stadlen are still with me. Matthew, you're probably chomping at the bit to get into this one.
Chomping at the bit. I definitely don't think we should be taking a leaf out of Donald Trump's book on any of this. But there is a difference between the Rwanda scheme and what is being proposed here, or what is being planned here by Starmer and Yvette Cooper. These Maloney-style deals, the Italian deals, are not about sending people back from here, or at least these particular deals aren't. They are trying to stop the issue upstream. So they're going to the source countries and saying, we will give you money to stop this happening at the very start.
Even if those source countries have worse human rights issues, Libya, for example, than Rwanda.
I don't think that there is a perfect answer to any of this. Do I feel queasy about it? Yes, although I'm not sure that in the case of Kurdistan that there are massive human rights abuses on the scale of which we've seen in certain other countries. We're all going to have to become experts on Kurdistan, presumably. But if you accept that there isn't a perfect solution, if you accept that we don't have limitless budget and limitless space and limitless housing and public services to house all the world's asylum seekers and refugees, and certainly not all of those would-be migrants who aren't actually genuine asylum seekers, then you have got to do something about it. What do you do? Well, you certainly try to smash the gangs, but that's going to be very difficult, and you probably have to do something like what Starmer is attempting here.
But it doesn't seem to involve, to me, Neil, a deterrent. And that's what Rwanda, your government, was trying to set up, a deterrent to stop people getting in those boats.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when Keir Starmer was first elected, there was no doubt that when you sort of interviewed migrants trying to cross, they thought, well, we've got a Prime Minister now that stopped the Rwanda scheme and he is going to sort of welcome us here. So therefore, this message has got to be better for Keir Starmer. But I think I find it fascinating that you're going to sort of pay these countries where these people have left from to try and hang on to them. Now, what are they going to do with that money? Are they going to try and enforce them to keep them physically there? Are they actually going to try and improve their lot that they don't actually want to come here in the first place? That would be a much better solution. I think we probably need to see all the details of it. But like as far as I'm concerned, I'm sorry, it's hypocrisy, hypocrisy, hypocrisy. And that's where I would leave it. But I am quite happy to wait and see what happens. If it has if it does have a good effect, and we don't forget we're actually got more migrants now this year than we had last year. The situation's getting worse. Now we're trying to target the boats, the government in Germany in particular. I think there needs to be a change of law there to be able to stop those gangs keeping the boats there. Let's do all of these things because no one thing will be right. But I think some sort of deterrent to stop people crossing the channel would be a good thing. And that's why I think it was very wrong of Keir Starmer just to axe the Rwanda thing. Again, a great political statement, but then turn round to bite him because he needs to do something about migration.
The deterrent has to be ethical, because otherwise, what are we as a country? Well, what do we stand for? For example, you might say, you will talk to some far-right Brits who will probably say, half in jest, well, let's just blow the dinghies up. Right? That would be a deterrent, wouldn't it? But it would be an entirely unacceptable deterrent. And I stood against the Rwanda deal because I didn't think we should send people who were genuinely seeking asylum and who might go on to have their asylum cases upheld if they were processed here to a third country such as Rwanda, which has a dodgy human rights record.
You see, I would accept what you say if you hadn't had Keir Starmer, who just seemed to be politically completely opposed to the idea of Rwanda, and now he's coming up with schemes which I would suggest to you, when we start to look at them with the daylight, are not going to be much different. I think a lot of those countries, their human rights are not good, and if you're going to try and sort of forcibly put those people back and they're going to keep them, are they going to take our money and then they're still going to come?
Very briefly, he opposed it for two reasons, Starmer. Mostly because he didn't think it was a deterrent, but also, I think, on ethical grounds.
Yeah, but these ethics are now exactly the same.
We have to move
what
on.
What he opposed in Parliament before.
We could talk about ethics, which is somewhere near Kent, evidently. I'm joking. This is Dawn Newsom on GB News. Pressure is mounting on the government to backtrack plans to change inheritance tax on farms. I'll be chatting to a farmer after the break, and he's not happy. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet, and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good
morning,
to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean, and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions, and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
Oh.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Newsom. Hope you're having a lovely Sunday afternoon out there. Now, Sir Keir Starmer was accused of running out of the back door like a rat to avoid angry farmers protesting outside the Welsh Labour conference yesterday over those controversial changes to inheritance tax on farms. Farmers are continuing to voice their anger and may have threatened to go on strike, cutting off many have threatened to go on strike, cutting off our domestic food supply. Thousands are planning to march on Whitehall on Tuesday. More on this now. I'm joined by dairy farmer and columnist Jamie Blackett. Jamie, Thank you very much for joining us. This is getting really serious now. Are you planning to protest yourself on Tuesday?
I certainly will be there on Tuesday. We're all very angry about this because I think it's what people don't perhaps understand is it's a big hit for the rural economy. This is money that's going to go out of the rural economy and into the City of London, because now every farmer has got an inheritance tax problem, or most commercial farmers above the sort of hobby farmer level have got this huge inheritance tax problem that they didn't have before, that they weren't warned was coming. And the life insurance premiums they're all going to have to pay is going to go straight out of the rural economy and into the City of London. The money that could have been spent, has up to now been spent on small builders and fencing contractors and drainage contractors and that kind of thing. The only way I can stop my farm being broken up is to insure my life to pay the death tax when it comes. And what is going to take the hit is our infrastructure, because I won't be able to spend that money on that now.
So, Jamie, I mean, have you been happy to hear what Keir Starmer has said about the situation? Are you getting any positive feedback that there might be tweaks to this?
No, we're not. I mean, they seem to be doubling down on it. We're not getting anything at all. I mean, I actually am on the kind of moderate wing. I think we need to leave a ladder for the government to climb down before we actually sort of hit Farmageddon. I mean, of course, we can bring the country to a halt if we want to with our tractors and empty the supermarkets of food. But I think it's important that we really negotiate this first. I don't think that the government has thought it through at all. We know that they said they weren't planning to do it, and suddenly it came at the last minute. And clearly they hadn't done their homework. They thought that they were going to be hitting 25% of farmers, and DEFRA have told them that this is actually hitting 66% of farmers. And they hadn't thought through the second order issues of what's going to happen. It's going to hit tenant farmers particularly hard because they're possibly going to have the farms sold now to pay the death tax for the landowners. I'm actually an owner-occupier. I own my land and I farm it myself. But you've heard me say that the impact on me is that extra life insurance. This affects almost every farmer, and they just haven't thought it through, I don't think. And they are really going to have to, I think, climb down and find some way of addressing it. They could have closed off the loophole that they talk about by lengthening the qualifying period when somebody buys land. They may have to wait 5 or 10 years before they qualify for the inheritance tax relief.
Jamie,
I think every farmer would think that was entirely fair.
Jamie,
and I think they need to look at the thresholds as well.
Just very, very quickly, Jamie, you mentioned Farmageddon. If the government don't budge and you are left in the situation you are currently in, what is the end game for farmers? How far are you actually going to go?
Well, I think there are a lot of people. I mean, I'm very lucky. I have a second income as a writer, and I have an army pension. And I think, we would just about get through this by making cuts, as I've said, to our own internal maintenance budget. But
are
for
you
a
going to
lot
block
of farmers,
streets?
if they're too old to get the life insurance, this is existential. And so people will do whatever it takes to get this reversed.
And does that mean we are going to see, if the government don't budge, does that mean we're going to see tractors blocking our streets, maybe manure sprayed over government buildings? Any of that type of...
There's already a strike on farmers taking sewage cake onto their land. So that's going to have a knock-on effect immediately on the water companies. The government's probably going to have to step in and deal with that. That's one example of what's going on. And yes, I think there may well be other direct action if the government's just not prepared to listen. They're being so arrogant at the moment. They haven't thought it through. They need to think again. And farmers definitely will carry on protesting because otherwise their farms are going to be broken up.
Yeah, and it is Farmageddon for many of you. Dairy farmer and columnist Jamie Blackett, thank you very much for joining me, and best of luck on Tuesday. OK, let's see what my panel make of this. Neil Parish and Matthew Stadlam were both frothing even at the bit over this one in the previous hour. Matthew, you felt like you had plenty more to
well,
give us
I was feeling quite angry and passionate earlier, and some of that has died down. And I thought he spoke rather well, that farmer. But I don't think there will be Farmageddon. I could come back in a week or 2 weeks and we'll see where we are. I don't think that will happen. I also don't think Starmer will back down. There is this dispute over figures. It is possible that the government has got this wrong and that it has put the threshold considerably too low, and if that is the case and it wasn't deliberate, then that is incompetence, and it's absolutely right the government should be scrutinised about this. I just want to offer a little bit of perspective, and there are lots of people who would love not to pay inheritance tax, but they do, and farmers until this point didn't have to pay a penny of inheritance tax on and potentially millions and millions and millions of pounds. And so what we're saying, effectively, if you want the government to U-turn, is that farmers should be a special case and that we should feel empathy and sympathy with them in a way that we don't for anyone else who doesn't fancy paying an inheritance tax. And don't forget, Dawn, there is this 7-year rule. So most farmers, if they want to, if they're lucky enough to live, as many of them will, we hope, beyond 7 years, they could hand it over now and they wouldn't have to pay any inheritance tax.
Neil, you are a farmer. But why should farmers be a special case with inheritance tax?
Well, I mean, it was only last year at the National Farmers Union Conference that Keir Starmer came and lauded farmers and said what a good job we did producing food and looking after the environment, and now we're under siege. And I think, there's an interesting point made about the sewage, because, a lot of sewage goes onto the land. We need to actually process more sewage to stop it actually going into our rivers, and so therefore
already
more
full of the stuff in any case.
Exactly, and this is what this government's working hard on. So all of this is going to be counterproductive, and I don't think any farmer wants to block food and food supply, because at the end of the day there's a lot of public support out there for British farming and British food, and so therefore I think that will be the last instance. But of course, you've got an elected dictatorship on 34% of the vote.
Oh, come
on.
Actually
telling us, we don't really need farmers. We don't. I mean, the whole of the budget
nonsense.
was
You shouldn't
all
say
about
that. You shouldn't
private
say that.
One at a time.
Small business, and farmers are one of those where let's actually have a go at them, and yet we need our food supply, we need our family farms, and a lot of them under pressure already, because a lot of them do borrow a lot of money in order to carry on farming. I think that is the issue, that this will just put more pressure on these farming.
Sorry, I do think that was an irresponsible thing for someone who was you were yourself an elected MP. Every single MP, all 650, have been elected. It is an entirely democratically elected party, the Labour Party, in power at the moment. Our Prime Minister has an entirely democratic mandate. It is true that they have... Let me finish. It is true that they have an ocean-wide majority, but pond deep, and that is up to the British people to change next time round if they want. Earlier, why I got so cross earlier and didn't get a chance to come back to you, you were talking about farmers being the bedrock of our society. They are part of the bedrock of our society. So are nurses, so are hospital porters, so are doctors, so is everyone else, and they're not getting special pleading.
When it comes to the rural community, they really are. And this is what this government does not understand. It's no point in destroying the farming sector, because you destroy the parish councils, all of these other things that go with it. They support their local schools. All of these things are really important. And what we're doing is we're taking a section of society because it actually suits Labour to do it. And that's why I dislike it so much. And we will argue about that, because, you have a government that only had much more than a third of the vote, and yet can decide to set itself up against the countryside, because that's what we see it as. We really do. We see it as you're actually having a real go at farming in the countryside, and I don't think you have seen anything yet, because, believe it or not, I'm quite moderate compared to a lot of the farmers out there who will not be as moderate, but I think we will lose society and we will lose support if we go too far. But I think this government should not have gone in this place, because they didn't say so in their manifesto. They lulled farmers into a false sense of security. We are going to be a Blairite government. Instead of that, we've got a full-blown
On that point,
social...
can I concede the point very quickly? I will concede this point. As far as I know, unless I've got this wrong, and I don't think I have, Steve Reid, who is Secretary of State, isn't he, for Agriculture and Food and Rural Affairs, he did say, I think last year, before Labour got into power, that there would be no change to APR, to agricultural property relief. And, of course, there has been this massive change, and on that, I think it is poor politics by Labour, and I think it is. I think there is a risk it is poor policy, but I think it's more poor politics than poor policy.
OK,
Three days before the budget, the farmers were reassured by the Secretaries of State that there was not going to happen.
OK, we have to leave it, gentlemen. Very, very fiery debate. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. Loads more coming up on today's show. Should transgender women be allowed to play women's football? We'll be discussing that after the break. But first, let's get the news with Will Hollis.
Thank you, Dawn. Your headlines at 2:30. Pressure is mounting on the government to reconsider its plan to apply inheritance tax to farmers for the first time. The Prime Minister has been accused of sneaking out like a rat rather than facing farmers protesting at the Welsh Labour conference yesterday. Thousands of farmers from across the country are descending on London this week in objection to the government's plan to tax assets when farmers pass away. The government is expected to announce an Italian-style immigration deal with countries like Kurdistan and Vietnam. The Times reports the Home Secretary is preparing to pay millions of pounds to countries to fund more preventative measures, stopping migrants from journeying to Britain. Despite scrapping the Conservatives' flagship Rwanda plan, Labour is said to be modelling their immigration policy on that of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's deal with Albania. The Home Office has not confirmed to GB News which new countries they may be speaking with or any of the specifics of reported deals. £1 billion in extra funding for bus services has been announced by the government. Areas receiving an unprecedented amount of funding include Peterborough, the Isle of Wight and Torbay, with £712 million for councils and more than £200 million for operators. China is ready to manage differences while working with Donald Trump, according to the country's president. Xi Jinping met with American President Joe Biden for the final time at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperative Summit in Peru. President Xi said that despite ups and downs, the relationship between the two countries has been stable during the last 4 years. Meanwhile, Biden said competition should not veer into conflict. In other sad news, a woman found dead in the boot of a car has been named by police as Harshita Brella. The 24-year-old was discovered in London last Thursday after police received a call from a member of the public concerned for her welfare. Police believe the woman from Corby in Northamptonshire was attacked by someone she knew, but detectives say they're keeping an open mind. A mandatory referral has been made to the Independent Office for Police Conduct by Northamptonshire Police because of previous contact with Miss Brella. And your last one for now, tickets for next year's Glastonbury have sold out in less than 40 minutes. Organisers of the Somerset Music Festival apologised to anyone who did not get a ticket, stating that demand was much higher than supply. Selling at £373.50 plus a £5 booking fee, this year's lineup is rumoured to include northern rock and roller Sam Fender, punk legends Green Day and pop star Olivia Rodrigo. Those are your latest headlines. Sophia Wenslow will be back in around half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Will. Missing you already. Now, there's plenty more coming up on today's show, but before that, Nanna Akua show starts at 3 o'clock, and as always, she's got a cracker lined up for you. Nanna, what's in the show today?
Well, good afternoon, Dawn. Well, we've got loads to talk about. First of all, we're going to talk about whether the police have got their priorities a bit wrong. Instead of policing major crime and pushing their resources to that, you have them dealing with hate crime or word crime, which, obviously needs its own thing, but, how much resource do you put in it, sending 2 officers and all of this? I mean, it's just a bit much when we have such issues, so we're going to be talking about that. Also, my big question on X will be about the farmers and whether you support them going on strike, because, of course, it will affect you if they do. But are they right to really dig their heels in on this one with Keir Starmer? And also, I've got an incredible guest. You won't want to miss this person. They have a disability, but what they have achieved is quite something. Stay tuned, because that is all coming up.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, it's Nanna's show starting at 3 o'clock, straight after this one. So that sounds like one you really don't want to miss. Now, remember, let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your-say and joining our conversation. Loads more coming up on today's show, though. Should transgender women be allowed to play women's football? A protest is taking place in Wembley today to fight for the right to fair and safe football matches for women and girls. Remember, England's taking on Northern Ireland. We'll hear from somebody at that protest after the break. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News. We'll see you soon.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So we've got colder weather on the horizon for many of us, bringing some blustery snow showers, particularly to northern parts of Scotland. But before we get there, we've got an area of low pressure waiting in the wings out in the northwest of the UK that will be moving its way towards us through the end of the weekend and into the start of the new working week. Before we get there, though, it's a bit of a mixed picture as we go through this afternoon. Some sunny spells, some scattered cloud, plenty of showers around in the north and the west, and for northern parts of Scotland, these likely to turn to sleet and snow over the hills. There'll be some sunshine between those showers quite widely across the country, and it'll still be feeling quite mild in the south, temperatures just a touch above average, but further north with some blustery northerly winds, feeling quite chilly through this afternoon. As we then go into this evening, those showers continue to pile in across northern parts of Scotland. Perhaps we could see up to around 10 centimetres of snow across the high ground by the time we get to Monday morning, and it will be a really quite chilly end to the evening, particularly where we see those clear spells. For parts of Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, perhaps a bit more cloud around, so those blustery showers pushing in from the northwest. And for much of England and Wales as well, it will be a cloudy end to the day on Sunday. As we then go through the rest of Sunday evening, showers continuing across northern parts of Scotland, but southern parts of Scotland, northern parts of England, perhaps staying that little bit drier overnight, plenty of clear spells around. But a more organised band of rain pushes its way south and eastwards during the early hours of Monday morning, affecting southern parts of England and South Wales, perhaps turning heavy in places, and that will keep it just a little bit milder here, temperatures in the high single figures. But further north, quite a harsh frost to start on Monday morning, perhaps some icy stretches in places, so do take care during Monday morning's rush hour. As we then head through in towards Monday afternoon, this next area of rain arrives from the west, pushing its way eastwards as we go through the afternoon, perhaps turning to sleet and snow over any high ground across Northern Ireland. But there will be some sunnier spells across eastern areas, but it will still be a chilly feeling day with temperatures well to the low single figures further north, but a little bit milder further south.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got, in my opinion? The best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Newsom. How do you fancy a bit of sport? Should transgender women be allowed to play women's football? The 1205, a collective who raise awareness of injustices for women posed by men pretending to be women, are staging a protest at Wembley Stadium today. They are fighting for the right to fair and safe football matches for women and girls and calling on the FA to introduce a policy which guarantees no men are allowed to play in women's sport, given the biological advantage. So we hopefully have a guest joining us live from the march, but the connection's a bit not great at the moment, so we'll wait for that. So I'm going to talk to my panel first. I still have Neil Parish and Matthew Stadlen with me. I'm going to come to you first, Matthew, seeing as you've got a very bad back, so the idea of you doing anything physical at the moment. Obviously, it's the big game today, England's Nations League, Republic of Ireland versus England. This is where this protest is taking place.
I'm going to go to the game, unlike you.
Yes.
Not a fan of international football, apparently.
We have an international break every week. I just want Premiership back, all right? But that's just me. Anyway, stick to the point.
I'm not going in my suit, by the way. I'm going to go in my hoodie.
You about what you're wearing.
I'll tell you what I think about this.
What do you think about biological men playing biological women in football?
I think most people instinctively would say no, and say no to transgender women playing any form of sport with women, because that's, I just think, instinctive. Then you look at it in a bit more detail, and I think there are plenty of women around who are stronger than men and much better at all sorts of sport than men. But I think perception matters, and I think for fairness and for the perception of fairness, only women should be able to play with women.
Right.
But it should be dealt with sensitively, because we are dealing with competing rights.
Right, OK. I think we have got Jean now, feminist and activist, Jean Hatchett, who's actually at the protest today. Jean, thank you very much for joining me. Really appreciate your time. How's it going down there today?
I've had to walk away. It's really very busy and very noisy.
Of course.
And we've had some great support. So, yeah, I think, as we know, most people are absolutely in agreement with us. You know, we're seeing some people not quite understanding, and then when we explain what has happened to this young woman, they are absolutely just appalled that the FA are behaving like this towards her.
So this is a 17-year-old girl who, with suspected autism, that we're aware, who challenged an opposing player on a female football match and said, because this person supposedly had a beard, we don't know the full details, but said, "Are you a man?" And for that, she's been accused of being transphobic and banned from 6 matches. That is the starting point for this, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where we all decided that we really had to get quite noisy and do something. Because the FA aren't listening, and if they've punished a 17-year-old girl for saying words that are true, and it's her that is called wrong, and it is her that is punished, what kind of state have we got to in this country that the truth is punished and lies are rewarded? Because that's what is happening here.
Jean, have you had any response from the FA at all? I mean, why don't any, people like, Gary Lineker, who have got such a strong voice in football, speak out about what is happening to young girls starting out in this sport?
What am I supposed to think at this point other than misogyny and cowardice? It's one or the other, because otherwise they would be saying, actually, no, now we can see that we took that policy too far. We've listened to the wrong people, and we are not secure in what we've done because we have these situations arising. But they're not doing that. And, Gary Lineker, I'll call him a coward. I'll call him a coward right here and now, because it isn't progressive to punish 17-year-old young women out of their own sport in favour of, big blokes with earrings in. It's just a ludicrous situation. And if they are too cowardly and spineless to call men, well, women aren't, and we will.
Brilliant. Jean Hatchett, thank you very much joining us from the march today outside Wembley. Thank you very much. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. After the break, I'm a Celebrity is back, and we've got a great exclusive for you. So all of that and much more to come. Don't go too far. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunj Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together?
That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunj and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror. And I've heard this story so many times before,
Yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan.
Yeah.
And they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause. And I just suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess you still, I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old or even an 18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, you know, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and looked after my skin. So, you know, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with and then, you know, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Advocaat used to be...
Hello, welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn-Nice. And it's getting to the end of the show where we've got alcohol, so we're getting a bit frisky. Hope you've got a nice glass of something in front of you too. Now, I'm a Celebrity is back. It starts tonight. And who better to discuss it with than the marvellous Nicola McLean, who has actually been there and done it. You've got that T-shirt, Nicola. What do you make of this lineup and the show starting tonight?
Yeah, I can't wait for the show tonight. I've got a bottle of wine chilling in the fridge and I cannot wait for 9 o'clock.
You've been doing that in any case, but...
I would. Yeah, I think the lineup looks fantastic. I mean, Colleen Rooney, what a great booking for them. I love GK Barry. I think she'll be fantastic. Talisa, I'm pleased for Talisa and I hope that she gets a good run in the show. I think she deserves a comeback. So, yeah, I think it looks like a great lineup and I'm excited for it.
What do you make of the fact that, I mean, the front page of The Sun yesterday, if I hold it up for you, they have signed Rebecca Vardy, the other half of the Wagatha Christie lineup. She's not mincing her words, is she? Is saying that she wishes that Colleen will be eating some various nasty bits and pieces they have to eat in there and eat humble pie as well. So she's not mincing her words. So do you think this is going to, you know, really kick off again?
Yeah, I think it's going to... I mean, it was epic from The Sun to get her as a columnist. I'm doing the Mirror's column, so I think I'll be equally as good. But it was great for them to get that. And obviously... Becky doesn't hold back. I always say that Rebecca is unapologetically Rebecca Vardy, so she's clearly proven that. I mean, I was amazed she was doing it, but good for her. And equally, I cannot wait to see Colleen in the jungle. I think she'll be... I think Colleen's going to win it, personally. So she'll be great. So, yeah, let's... we all love a wag war, don't we?
There is a hint, coming from Rebecca herself, that she's flying out to Dubai, as far as we're aware, but there is a hint that she wants to go back into the jungle or to greet Colleen when she comes out. Do you think that's a possibility?
No, ITV is not going to do that. I don't think that that's a possibility, no.
Really?
And it'd be great for us to see.
Are you surprised at some of the language, that this is such a vicious fight that is still going on between these two women?
See, I'm not sure if it's vicious. I think that it's all a bit silly, really, isn't it? And I'm not surprised. And yeah, I'll be looking forward to reading more.
Yeah, it does actually. OK, and you think Colleen's going to win, do you?
I do, yeah. Okay. I think she will.
Just very, very quickly, I'm running out of time. What difference did it make to your life? Was it a good or a bad?
Oh my God, it was life-changing. I was so fortunate to get it. I grabbed it with both hands, and yeah, I still am thankful that they gave me the opportunity.
Right, OK, thank you very much, Nicola. And that's starting tonight, but obviously you'll be taping it and watching GB News instead. Right, OK, now, you're wondering what this yellow drink is in front of us. This is something you only ever do at Christmas, right? You know, you only ever do various disgusting things at Christmas, like eat an entire tub of chocolate, mince pies, Christmas pudding. What are they about? Anyway, this is a snowball. Remember snowballs, gentlemen?
Yes.
I've never...
You don't look that...
I've never tried one.
Right, OK.
I've heard of it, but...
A snowball is a traditional drink made with advocaat and lemonade, and you drink it at Christmas. So
advocaat was very...
Which is alcoholic egg, isn't it?
It is, that's right.
Yes, alcoholic egg.
And a bit of vodka, I think.
I signed up to this, I have to say, but now that I've looked at it and smelt it, I don't think I can do it, Dawn.
Why?
It's not a bush lemonade. It's not a bush tucker twirl. Just do it.
It's excellent for back pain. It's very good for back pain.
It's very good for back pain.
Yeah, if you drink of that, you won't feel a thing.
How did you do all those, the eating of the bugs bit?
You won't feel a thing afterwards.
I was a machine. I was so good at it.
Yeah, in any case, it's actually quite tasty. I don't remember it being that nice.
Not bad, is it?
I think we've run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Matthew Stadler, Neil Parrish, you've been a dream today. A great debate. Nicola, thank you so much for coming in and looking so gorgeous. Nanna's up at 3 o'clock. Thank you for watching. I hope you have the lovely rest of your day. But I think it's time to check up what the weather's like. We haven't really done that yet. Here's the forecast for you.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's going to be turning colder for all of us as we head into the new working week, with some sleet and snow in the forecast for some of us, and plenty of blustery showers around as well. This is all thanks to this area of low pressure that's moving in from the northwest towards the UK as we go through into the start of Monday and Tuesday. Back to this evening though, a bit of a mixed picture across the UK. Plenty of cloud, some outbreaks of rain sinking their way south and eastwards across the southern half of the UK, but further north staying a little bit drier. Plenty of clear spells around, some blustery showers across the far north of Scotland. These likely to turn to sleet and snow over the hills, and it'll be a really chilly start to the morning across parts of Scotland, perhaps as low as -4 or -5 in places. So this could mean some icy stretches, so do take care during Monday morning's rush hour. But further south, a bit of a milder start to the morning, plenty of showery rain around, this perhaps turning heavy across southwestern parts of England. For Northern Ireland, northern parts of England, generally a bit of a drier start to the day though, some sunny spells as we go through the morning. But for Scotland, despite the bright start, it will be a really chilly start, so do take care if you are on the roads during Monday morning's rush hours. There could be some ice on some untreated surfaces. Those sleet and snow showers continue to pile in across northern parts of Scotland throughout all of Monday, and that initial area of rain across the southern areas clears away to the south, but this next area of rain arrives across parts of Northern Ireland, most likely falling as rain. But we could see some sleet and snow over the hills as we go through Monday afternoon. Some sunny spells across eastern areas through the afternoon, but feeling really quite chilly here. Temperatures only around 2 or 3 degrees, but just holding on to that milder air further south. To start on Tuesday, we could see some disruptive snow across northern parts of England, most likely falling over high ground, but there is a chance that we could see sleet and snow to lower levels, so do take care if you are out on Tuesday morning. But Tuesday afternoon, there should be plenty of sunny spells around, but still plenty of blustery showers, particularly across the northern half of the UK, and it will be feeling cooler as we go towards the middle part of the week, with temperatures well below average for the time of year.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win Christmas on Us this year. There's
£20,025 in tax-free cash. There's £5,000 to spend on gifts for all the family. There's £500 to spend in your favourite supermarket. And a festively themed GB News goodie bag will get it all to you in time for the big day. For another chance to win, call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2 or post your name and number to GB09 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 22nd of November. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation. You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nanna Akua. Welcome on board. It is 3 o'clock and for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours, author and political organiser James Schneider, and also, cracky smile, James, man, it might never happen, and broadcaster, or maybe it already has, and broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Coming up, as farmers prepare to strike and protests are planned this week over Rachel Reeves' inheritance tax raid, I'm asking, do you support the farmers going on strike? There's a poll-up on X asking you that very question. Do you support the farmers going on strike? And in my niggle at 4 o'clock, what do you want our police force to prioritise? Policing thought or policing crime?
Let's get the police to do the one thing that every member of the public wants them to do, get after antisocial behaviour and violence and threats.
And what is Rachel Reeves talking about here?
Because why it is so worrying that at this crucial time, the Prime Minister and Chancellor concocted a new jobs tax to arrive in the spring. Despite all of their election promises to cut national insurance contributions, they're actually raising them against the strong advice of business and trades unions.
Really? That was Rachel Reeves a few years ago when she was not in power. I'll play you the full clip later on. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. It's just gone 3 o'clock. These are your headlines.
Pressure is mounting on the government to reconsider its plan to apply inheritance tax to farmers for the first time. The Prime Minister has been accused of sneaking out like a rat rather than facing farmers protesting at the Welsh Labour conference yesterday. Thousands of farmers from across the country are descending on London this week in objection to the government's plan to tax assets over £1 million by 20% when farmers pass away. Earlier, GB News spoke to farmer Charles Goadby.
They now, I'm sure, realise that their figures are wrong. We've got the evidence to show that they're wrong, but they're just burying their head in the sand. They don't want to admit it. We're not a farming dynasty. Yet we, through working hard, investing everything we have and taking far below the minimum wage, have managed to build up a sustainable farming business.
The government is expected to announce an Italian-style immigration deal with countries like Kurdistan and Vietnam. The Times reports the Home Secretary is preparing to pay millions of pounds to countries to fund more preventative measures, stopping migrants from journeying to Britain. Despite scrapping the Conservatives' flagship Rwanda plan, Labour is said to be modelling their immigration policy on that of Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's deal with Albania. The Home Office has not confirmed to GB News which new countries they may be speaking with or the specifics of any reported deals. Meanwhile, the Home Office has confirmed that more than 400 illegal migrants crossed the Channel in small boats, as GB News first revealed yesterday. Official figures show that 425 people made the journey in 9 small boats on Saturday before being intercepted by Border Force vessels. More than 33,500 illegal migrants have now crossed since the start of the year. That's already 4,000 more than the total number who crossed during the whole of 2023. Meanwhile, there are reports that Donald Trump's team are looking at plans to deport illegal migrants to Rwanda. Following that scheme that was drawn up by the Conservative government, the president-elect is reportedly considering a number of different countries to send illegal immigrants to. A source close to Trump's team has said he campaigned on a promise to crack down on illegal immigration, and he is determined to stick to it. In other news, hundreds of drones and missiles have been fired into Ukraine as Russia ramps up attacks on infrastructure ahead of winter. In the biggest attack for several months, Ukraine's foreign minister said energy and water utilities have taken severe damage with power cuts in several regions, while 7 people were killed. The election of Donald Trump this month has increased the uncertainty around the conflict, with the prospect of a looming push towards negotiations expected. £1 billion in extra funding for bus services has been announced by the government. Areas receiving an unprecedented amount of funding include Peterborough, the Isle of Wight and Torby, with £712 million for councils and more than £200 million for operators. Bus fares went up by 50% recently, where they are now capped at £3 for a single trip. Earlier, GB News spoke to Transport Secretary Louise Hay.
First time we are committing this funding in a fair, transparent way. The previous government took funding streams and they made areas compete against each other, with particularly rural areas losing out. Today, the funding settlement will give areas like Essex, Kent, Devon and areas across the north like Blackburn and Liverpool record sums of money to put into their bus services, which will increase reliability, improve real-time information and things like accessibility at bus stops and bus stations.
China is ready to manage differences while working with Donald Trump. That's according to the country's president. Xi Jinping met with American President Joe Biden for the final time at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperative Summit in Peru. President Xi said despite the ups and downs, the relationship between the two countries has been stable during the last 4 years. Meanwhile, Biden said competition should not veer into conflict. President-elect Trump has pledged to apply tariffs to Chinese imports. During his last term of office, he labelled COVID the Chinese virus. And Conservative peers are planning to delay the handover of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius to allow Donald Trump to block the controversial deal. Sir Keir Starmer's government has already agreed a draft treaty for the transfer. However, opponents of the plan say giving up the British overseas territory could give China greater influence in the region, threatening the security of a US base. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. Welcome to GB News. It's just